Turns out lots of money buys elections. In what became the most expensive congressional race in American history in New York's 16th district, the lobby that works on behalf of the genocidal Israeli government successfully purchased a congressional seat for Republican backed Democrat George Latimer in his primary race against Jamaal Bowman, who held the seat. So, I'm going to discuss what went on here, including, of course, as I said, the obvious. Being outspent 20-1 in the most expensive congressional race in American history obviously is going to have an impact. That's why they spent the money. I want to be clear off the top here. Anyone arguing, whether in media, on social media, in the comments here, anyone arguing that money didn't matter in this race, that no, Jamaal Bowman simply lost because he's too far left, or he is too concerned about the lives of Palestinians. He is too critical of genocide. Anyone arguing these things, that money did not play a role here, is either being dishonest or they're stupid. And they should be completely ignored. It's not even worth engaging with. It's not even worth reading their opinions. Obviously, the money was the difference here. Now, there's a bit more to it. I'll show you here this is the result. George Latimer winning with 58.4% of the vote to Jamaal Bowman at 41.6%. The district was recently redistricted, so there's been some changes in the demographics in the race. So Westchester became a much larger piece of Jamaal Bowman's district, and they largely went for Latimer compared to the Bronx, that largely, to a greater degree, went for Jamaal Bowman. So that also played a piece in this as well. But let's be clear. Being outspent 20-1 with, I think it's, I'll get to the data here in a second, but around $23 million in outside spending being spent against Jamaal Bowman, who had around, I think, around $2 million in spending, is going to make an obvious difference in the race. And they've done this before. Pro-Israel group pours millions into primary to defeat Jewish candidate. Just to be clear, Israel does not mean Jewish. Supporting Israel does not mean you support Jewish people. I know this has been said 1,000 times before, but we are talking about an Israeli government committing genocide, not Jewish people. This should be obvious, but there has been so much misinformation out there, or just propaganda spread about, oh, if you criticize Israel, then you are being anti-Semitic. It's completely insane. When you have the pro-Israel group defeating a Jewish candidate, that should be clear. So, and again, this was Andy Levin. I've discussed this race in the past, but this was like, if there were any questions before, it should have been cleared up after this race that being pro-Israel doesn't mean you are, pro-Jewish. All right, let's get to Latimer. So even apart from the spending, I have to mention this. Latimer, so he has his own issues. Apart from his terrible politics, this is a few years ago. This is a piece from 2021. He ran a red light, crashed a vehicle, ended up injuring a woman who ended up suing him because she sustained severe and permanent personal injuries. And he was driving an AIDS vehicle because his vehicle registration was suspended because he had so many parking tickets. I'm bringing this up to show you, if this was Jamaal Bowman or any progressive in any race, this would have been headline news in every single story about this race. Yet there is barely any discussion at all about George Latimer's history here. I guess it should be clear as well. He also had a secret lover that he gave a 6-figure county job to. And he was apparently on his way to see her when he crashed the car into the fence. If any of this happened to Jamaal Bowman, whether it's the secret lover or it's the crashing the vehicle, the hundreds of parking tickets, this would have been a big story, a big critique or hit against Jamaal Bowman. Yet, whispers. No one talked about this. There was no major media about George Latimer's recent history here. But let's get to stuff that matters here. So Cynthia Nixon Bowman is the last congressperson of color in the New York district, not wholly in New York City. And let's be clear, the record $20 million spent against him did not come from Dems in this Dem primary, but from anti-abortion. George Latimer ran against Planned Parenthood. Jamaal Bowman was the Planned Parenthood endorsed candidate. I discussed this in my video when Hillary Clinton endorsed George Latimer. This is this Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton ran against Planned Parenthood. Just so we're clear about who Hillary Clinton is. She doesn't care about anything except herself and power. Anti-abortion, anti-climate. George Latimer had said, there will never be a George Latimer climate change bill. That is a direct quote from George Latimer. Anti-climate justice, anti-worker, far-right Republicans. You do the math. Yeah. So George Latimer, and I've done previous videos on this. There were multiple events hosted by Republicans for George Latimer. Again, he is a Democratic candidate. It's a Democratic primary race. But because there's no chance of a Republican winning this New York district, the Republicans go and support the Republican in sheep's clothing in George Latimer. And that's what happened here. Gerrymandering, this is from Holly. Gerrymandering in New York is when you smash together the Bronx with Westchester County and pretend that makes sense demographically. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the change in the district was also played a part here. New York Working Families Party. This is before the election, but they tweeted out the Trump tax cuts were a windfall for the ultra-rich and an insult to working families. George Latimer is not just out of step with President Biden, but the vast majority of voters who are tired of seeing billionaires pay a lower tax rate than teachers and nurses. George Latimer is against taxing the wealthy. Again, Republican. Or you could argue there are Democrats that have that same position. So, conservative Democrat or Republican both apply here. But as this author wrote, speaking of Latimer, he could also be a thorn in President Biden's side if both men are elected. He told a Westchester County newspaper he was, quote, not signing on to raising taxes on the wealthy, as Mr. Biden wants. All right, the money. So this is from the Intercept. In total, outside groups spent $23 million on the race to unseat Bowman. More than 60% of that money came from one group, AIPAC, which poured more than $14 million into the race over the course of 5 weeks. In total, progressive groups backing Bowman spent $1.75 million, so not even $2 million. And as I said, historically unprecedented, the amount of money that was spent. So AIPAC, clogged the TV with ads, barrage of mailers, text messages, phone calls, all attacking Bowman and supporting Latimer. And again, that money having a massive impact on the race. So it's also worth pointing out, as Akela Lacey writes here, when Bowman was first elected in 2020, he ousted a 3-decade incumbent backed by pro-Israel money. He won his primary again in 2022. It took $17 million to oust him. So this idea that, it's Bowman's extreme politics of human rights and love and acceptance and progressive policy. It's these extreme politics that made him lose the race. He won previous races, including a previous race against, or when he ousted a pro-Israel Democrat who was there for 3 decades. He only lost this race because of the money. So this is a great piece. I'm just going to pull out a small bit of this, but great piece in Common Dreams from Norman Solomon. Toxic blend of Zionism, militarism, and right-wing spending take down Jamaal Bowman. So he does he goes into a greater discussion around discussing how the American military or militarism is intertwined with Zionism and the far right wing Israeli government. But he mentions here, I think this is just it's worth having this context. When this week began, Save the Children reported that, quote, up to 21,000 children are estimated to be missing in the chaos of the war in Gaza. Many trapped beneath rubble, detained, buried in unmarked graves, or lost from their families. While voters were casting ballots on Tuesday, the Washington Post summarized a new assessment from experts reporting to the UN. Quote, the threat of famine in the Gaza Strip has been revived after Israel's military operation in the southern city of Rafah disrupted aid deliveries, leaving more than 500,000 Palestinians on the brink of starvation. Israel's warfare, fully enabled by the U.S. government, is continuing to cause those systematic atrocities. This is the kind of thing Jamaal Bowman has been calling out. And for this week to be the week where this story comes out from Save the Children, up to 21,000 children are just missing. I mean, not that people watching this video need to be educated on this, because I'm sure at this point you're aware of this. But this just goes to show how on point Jamaal Bowman has been, whereas George Latimer has been defending these atrocities. Not even just defending them, excusing them, calling them necessary. As I said at the beginning, I just saved this tweet in case I forgot to mention it. But yeah, don't waste energy arguing with dipshits who don't think being outspent didn't matter. Buffalo mayor, I'm bringing this up because Jamaal Bowman and his camp should consider this. Buffalo mayor who lost primary reelected with write-in votes. So this was Byron Brown, the mayor of Buffalo, who lost a primary race to Democratic Socialist India Walton. And at that point, it appeared India Walton was going to win in Buffalo because there wasn't really a Republican candidate in that race. Well, Byron Brown, with all his backing, again, this guy is conservative, all of his money, all of his backing, launched a write-in campaign. And part of the campaign was distributing thousands of rubber stamps bearing his name to make it even easier for voters to write him in. So go into the ballot box, stamp my name. There you go. Vote for me through a write-in candidate. And he won. Now, I think this path is a little tougher for Bowman. I am curious to see if the Working Families Party is going to run or would be willing to run Bowman in this race against Latimer. They've done that before in other races where they have candidates. They have the ability to run a candidate. So will they challenge it? I guess the worry for some there would be, oh, you're going to split the vote and get a Republican in. So you're going to just get someone who's basically George Latimer anyways. Look, even if a Republican were to win that race, it's not going to last more than a couple of years. It's absolutely worth running against George Latimer. To see the lengths that these establishment Democrats will go to when they lose to somebody who actually cares about people, to see them do something like this, where's the excuse for people on the left to not fight the same way?